We're joined now by Brad Bradford, the Vice Chair of the city's Housing Committee, for a closer look at this growing problem. Councillor, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So this funding was promised back in July. It's now October. What is going on, and what's the latest from the feds?
Well, this is part of the interim housing assistance program. It's a program that's been in existence for a number of years now, recognizing that Toronto continues to receive more asylum seekers, more refugees, and at the end of the day, the City of Toronto is left holding the bag. So that program was brought forward a couple of years ago, but it has always been a program where the dollars have flown at the end of the calendar year. That doesn't help us with the financial pressure we're under right now. As has been pointed out, we've spent $115 million already this year. That's why we had to go back for an additional $97 million. We haven't received that to date, is my understanding. So we need to put some pressure on the federal government, but I would say it is in keeping with years previous. Those dollars flow at the end of the year as a reimbursement.
Councillor Bradford, can you just kind of lay out the status quo and how, what we've seen has been like a perfect storm right now?
Well, look, I mean, you have folks from around the world seeking asylum, refugees that continually come to Canada. We want to be a caring and compassionate nation, and that's certainly here the approach at the City of Toronto. But you see, there are times our shelter systems are up to 40% of the capacity is filled with asylum seekers and refugees, and that's why there is a different response needed. I would say all of these are Band-Aid solutions. Year after year, it's one-time funding agreements. The new administration with Mayor Chow has been in the office for 100 days. I have seen housing agreements, funding agreements, new deals for cities flowing in places like Kitchener and London. We have yet to see that materialize here in Toronto, and winter is just around the corner. Our shelters are already at capacity, so the City of Toronto's efforts need to be on hammering out an agreement with both the provincial and the federal government.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about refugees sleeping on the street, not far from where we are at 299 right now. A statement from the mayor's office does say the city continues to shelter 3,000 to 4,000 refugees in shelters and hotel rooms. How long before the city reaches a breaking point? Are we already there?
I think if you take a trip over to Peter Street, you see that we are already there. I mean, again, these are Band-Aid solutions that have been brought forward with one-off funding agreements with the federal government. The reality is we need to hammer out a new deal for cities. That needs to be our top priority. Everything that we're dealing with at the City of Toronto needs to be viewed through the lens of a new agreement for Canadian municipalities. I understand those conversations are happening with the province. I understand they're happening with the federal government. But to my understanding, they're not happening together. We need all three parties, Mayor Chow at the City of Toronto, the province and the federal government at the same table, hammering out these agreements on housing, on transit, on a sustainable funding arrangement for Canadian municipalities. Toronto should be leading. Right now, we're still waiting.
And Councillor Bradford, along those lines, is this $97 million even enough?
It's nowhere enough. Again, it's a Band-Aid solution for the challenge that we have unique here in Toronto with the volume of asylum seekers and refugees. But there are hundreds of millions of dollars required to start moving the needle on the housing file. It's not just the federal government, it's the provincial government as well. As you identified, that's 3,000 to 4,000 refugees and asylum seekers in our shelters on a nightly basis. There's still 7,000 to 8,000 individuals who are sleeping in our shelters on a nightly basis, and the ultimate solution is not more shelter spaces, it's building more housing.
Just to pick up on Bakari's point, the city said $97 million isn't enough. In fact, it says $115 million have already been spent on refugee shelter, and that was in August. When you crunch the numbers, how much do you think the city really needs?
Well, again, if you look at the entire housing envelope, it's in the order of magnitude of hundreds of millions of dollars just right now. That's not a long-term agreement. The reality is nobody should be living in a shelter. That is not a long-term solution. So if we're going to move forward at speed with our supportive housing program, with modular housing, with wraparound supports and services, we need rock-solid agreements with the provincial and federal government to help pay for those. We have work on our end to expedite the approval process, but the solution is a roof over people's heads, something dependable that they can rely on, not sleeping on a cot in a shelter.
And Councillor Brad Bradford, Vice Chair of the Housing Committee, thank you very much for taking time to speak with us and, add more light to this growing problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.